And welcome back to the next episode of the Big Gay Overalls podcast. For us, it's take 6,000 this morning, but it is a special episode because it is the long-awaited, much-promised Q&A with my beautiful wife, Sharon. Good morning, darling.
Good morning. How are you?
I'm great. We did try and do this full transparency this morning in the same room with some wireless mics and a camera, but the dog decided that wasn't going to happen. And then we've had some audio problems, but I think we're good now.
Yeah, so you missed out on the jokes I already told. I have to come up with some new ones.
Well, you will have to come up with some new ones for sure.
Yeah.
But I don't think that that's a problem for you.
No.
So the show is yours, my love. I love the name that you've put on there, wife. And you spelt it right this time. That's good. So for those that don't know you, this is my beautiful wife, Sharon. And she has some questions to ask me because she thinks that I need to be more transparent with my amazing audience. So here we go.
I just feel like we could dig a bit deeper on some things.
Okay, well, let's just do that.
And I think the folks at home would enjoy, getting to know you even more.
Okay.
I already know the answers, but usually, well, probably, hopefully.
Hopefully. Well, the floor is yours, my love. Where you go. Okay. I'm just going to call you the Yana Went of the Big Gay Overalls podcast today. Get to ask the hard-hitting questions.
Yeah. So are there any things that are off the table? We probably should have discussed this before now.
Probably should have, but we'll just go with the flow, I think.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. Anything.
Well, I do have editing control, so just saying.
So when I've listened to your podcast, I've really loved it, and it's been great to see you thrive in this space.
Oh,
what's it like for you to be a famous podcaster?
I can't answer that because I'm not a famous podcaster. In the scheme of podcasting, as much as I love and appreciate the people that listen to me, it's a teeny tiny drop in the podcasting ocean. But I do enjoy the creativity that this space allows and just being able to tell stories, not only mine, but also, I've been a guest on some amazing podcasts that I wouldn't have met these people who are now fast friends and had some amazing people on mine as well. So that's been super cool to hear different perspectives and stories. And I know for you as listening, you've kind of enjoyed some of those episodes. They're a little bit different. So yeah, that's cool.
Yeah. What has it meant for your identity?
I think for my identity, it's helped me be very clear about it in my brain and because of how comfortable I feel doing it, I know that I'm being authentic rather than having anything that misaligns. Like that doesn't make me feel good. I can tell when I'm doing something that's not 100% authentic because then I get that ick feeling. Whereas, I'm just going with it and I don't really have any reservations.
Okay. I wonder what you're most proud of in this space.
These are very different questions than what you started with in version 1. So there you go. Are you just warming me up this time? I'm most proud of the impact that it's had, the positive impact that it's had on people who are like, oh, I felt this way too, or I thought it was just me, or thank you for talking about something so transparently. So I think and I never set out with an agenda for this, but if one person could get something from it and it made their life a little bit better, then cool, I'm happy with that.
Yeah. What were your expectations going into it, if you had any, or your hopes?
Didn't have, no hopes, no expectations, but
just fly by the seat of your pants.
Yeah, it's pretty much ready, fire, aim. Like, let's just put it out there. Like, you saw how quickly it came to life. You didn't even know I did it. I came out that afternoon and went, oh, yeah, I've recorded a podcast. And you're like, what? So I just put it out there. I didn't really know what would happen. And that's kind of and for me to keep being authentic and keep doing the thing, I need to move faster than fear. So I need to keep doing the thing. Otherwise, I'll just get in my own head, and that's why I don't over edit and over filter, because then I'm like, it's too much chance for me to take stuff out and curate it, and that's not what I want either. It's just doing its own thing organically. Like, if it grows, it grows. If it doesn't, that's cool.
Did you have any fears about it?
Many, which I've talked about a bit, is about like, would someone who knew me in my previous life hear it and think less of me, or, not think I was the person who they thought I was, or judge me for it, or would it create issues in my, regular day-to-day life? And those are still reservations that I have through the process. But like I just said, like when I move faster than fear and just do the thing, then I just push past that.
Yeah.
If that makes sense.
Yeah. What would be the worst thing that could possibly happen from the podcast?
That I get hate, pretty much,
Yeah.
or that someone, which, I've been incredibly blessed to not have any trolls on socials or anything like that at this point. I understand that that's not always going to be the case from other bigger accounts I follow and things like that. And that's okay. Like, you can learn to weaponize them so that they're beneficial to you, or you can just block and delete. Like, it's no thing. But I think for me, what would feel like the worst thing is if it negatively impacted our relationship somehow, or because, it can be hard to live with a famous person. So I'm conscious of that. But I think it's if it creates issues in my personal life with somebody who I'm friends with or have a relationship with in some way, that it causes them hurt, or it creates an issue and creates conflict, which I really don't want to do.
It's interesting, isn't it? Because that stuff's a balance, because you can't lose your identity and sense of self to keep someone else comfortable.
Correct. And that's the hard balance for it, is understanding that. So I was having a conversation with somebody the other day, and it's like, if I'm putting something out there and I'm just being authentic, then I'm not responsible for how someone else receives that or how they filter it through their stories. If I've put something out there to be inflammatory and get a reaction, cool, then, that's what I've got to expect will happen and not be surprised or whatever. But if I've put something out there with good intention, I'm just being authentic, then, and someone doesn't receive it in the way that I intended, I can't really intend for anyone to receive anything in a particular way. But if that, by the time they've filtered it through their stories, leads to some conflict, and it's like, okay, I now know where they fit in my circles, kind of deal. And it kind of, people will self-select out. I say it like it's very binary like that, but it's not. It's still going to be tricky to navigate, but I just have to keep being authentic and telling, thank you, Dottie, telling my story. And
Dottie, excuse me, my dog.
Our dog, your dog at the moment, and telling my story and creating a space where people can tell their own authentic story as well.
So that seems to have been a shift for you in not being caught up in what other people think.
Yes. And that's an endless struggle for me, is like always worrying about other people's perceptions. But as I've got further in this whole journey of coming out and embracing myself, that's become less of a thing. It's still there, but that's, again, for me, the big thing is, if whenever I'm taking action and keep moving and not stopping because I'm afraid of something, then I'll come to a complete stop. So if I keep moving and keep doing the thing and then think about later that it was uncomfortable or it was difficult or whatever, but it doesn't matter, I've already done it now. Yeah. So I tend to, my circle is a lot smaller these days, so I weigh up how important is that person to me in my circle as about what their opinion matters to me. And if someone who I've never met and I don't know, and they're sitting in some, room on their internet, well, their opinion doesn't really mean a great deal to me, because they probably wouldn't say it to my face anyway.
Yeah. What's been interesting to watch is the amount of connections and relationships that you're developing online. So I wonder if you could talk a little bit about your connection to community and how that was maybe a struggle or a challenge to start with, and how it's different now.
Yeah, like I've always felt better when I've connected to a community. I think that's why I attached to CrossFit so much, because it was like I could belong to something bigger than me and be part of something. And I've always enjoyed, even in like work roles, being part of something rather than just me doing my own thing, which, you know, I have gone off and done my own thing, but when I'm part of something, I tend to be happier. But I'd always struggle to see where I fit necessarily in the LGBTQI plus community. And I know that this is common as well for people who come out late in life. And, you know, I've talked about before, we're not exactly, you know, walk down the street waving our pride flags, having a parade kind of members of the community. And we're not partiers. We essentially would live what people would describe as a heteronormative life. We're, you know, married, living in a house, doing our jobs, going about our life. We don't just only attend queer events. We don't only, you know, and as you come out later in life, it can be hard to figure out where you fit, because you're not one of the, you know, cool, hip, trendy ones if you're not a partier. And it's really great to see so many activities and events and now stuff being created that suit all sorts of, you know, if people want to have a picnic in the park, if they want to. So for me, this journey was like, I don't know where I fit or where I belong, but I've kind of started to find that through the connections I've made and the conversations I've made and whatever. And yes, it's all virtual and online, but it's like I can go to Threads and know that you're going to see pretty much stuff on your feed thanks to the algorithm that is within, you know, the stuff I'm interested in, stuff I post in LGBTQI, late in life lesbians, lesbians in general, that sort of stuff. Same as TikTok, its algorithm is really powerful. Like if you look at something for more than 0.2 of a second, it goes, oh, you want more of that? Great. And so you have to be careful at what you look at, because if you look at that, you know, camel video for 1 second too long, that's what your feed is going to be endlessly. Yep, Dottie just wandering around. So it's been good. Like I've enjoyed connecting with people, and I know through the community that we've created in Skool, which is the Embracing My Big Gay Overalls community, like interacting with people on that when we've done like a live call thing and talking about different topics, it's been good to feel like that we've kind of got that tribe and they all have similar values and identify the same way. I don't know if that answers your question.
Yeah. And what about the online sort of connections? What's that meant to you? Because there seem to be some quite deep and meaningful interactions.
Yeah, so I've become, you know, fast friends and firm friends with, you know, there's the Denise and JD who host the Rainbow Remix, Jen Vatanen, Melissa Hepner, you know, Angela Brionis, like just, you know, Christine Blosdale, a few people that I've connected with, and like they might have been on my podcast or I've been on theirs, but then it's gone beyond that in that we, you know, appreciate the work that each other's doing and we can have conversation. We get that. And we appreciate each other's authenticity and the journey and the story and go, oh yeah, me too. And all of our stories are slightly different, but you know, there's still a lot of the themes that are the same in it that we can connect on and talk on. And, you know, they're just good humans as well.
Yeah. It's quite interesting that there isn't that competition in that space.
No. And I like in podcasting in general, people can be very like, I don't want to give away the secrets of what I'm doing, but like with these people I connect with, and for example, Denise, she's been podcasting since before podcasting was even a thing. Yeah. And, you know, if you need help, if you have questions, like let me know. Like Angela from the Gay Podcast for Everyone, we're always sharing setups and geeking out on some of the tech stuff, going, oh, I tried this setup or I tried this lighting, and, you know, trying to make your space the best it can be, because in like people go, oh, there's enough podcasts. Well, there's plenty of podcasts, but no one's telling the story you have to tell the way that you have to tell it. So therefore there's room for all the voices.
Yeah,
I think. So, and I've really enjoyed the sharing of information, the stories and people's origin stories. Like I love that stuff anyway. So it's just been cool to see that. and to sharing that with other people as well.
Perfect. And you're right on the 15-minute mark of your warm-up.
Oh, great.
And now we get into the questions that everyone really wants to know.
Did you ask for listener submissions for this, or are you just going rogue?
I'm rogue, as always. I don't like to follow the rules.
No, you do not.
No. So I wonder about your first relationship and what that experience was like. So I know you've talked briefly about it, but I'd like a bit more depth into like that first, like you were married. So what was it like when you're first thinking about that and considering it and those really early experiences?
Well, I don't know that I even consciously thought about it. It just happened to to both of us, I guess. Like, we were friends. We connected on Twitter in a mutual program we were doing. Just became friends. I don't know why I was like drawn to connect with them. Like, you know, people were sharing their posts and stuff. They were a PT. And I don't know that it was a conscious thing that I was thinking about. Like, I never, ever would have thought that I was consciously thinking about embarking on a relationship with a woman. I wasn't seeking it out. Like, it just, like the day that it happened, like I remember I was going to the gym or something and I was chatting to her on the phone and she's like, I find it weird that I feel more strongly towards you than I do to my own husband, and that feels wrong. And I went, yeah. And we couldn't really put a finger on what it was. We just thought it was like just an intense friendship where we got each other and supported each other. So I don't know that it was a conscious thing. It just kind of just happened. But then when we realized that it was like we got the feelings, it was like, oh, I think we both freaked out a bit at the time. Like, fuck, what do we do with this? Like, and I know she retreated pretty hard and was like, this is wrong. And I was like, yep. And then we kind of, but then it was just like this wave of something we just couldn't fight at some point. Like, we didn't want to be not in each other's lives, but we didn't know how to do it in any other way, kind of thing.
And I think that's one of the trickiest times is that before you really take that step into it, that like struggle.
And it was really like, because we'd sort of connected, I don't know, from about the middle of the year, and we didn't actually meet until the September. So there was like hours and hours of phone conversation stuff where this thing just gradually built and we didn't even see it coming. And then it did. We're like, oh, and then, you know, it's just that momentary freak out. And then you do make a decision like, do I continue? Do I not? Even if it's not aligning with who I think I am and my values. But it was like I can't not kind of thing.
Yeah.
And that caused me a lot of conflict because, yes, I was married and going outside the bounds of that was not something that I ever thought I would do. And I was not necessarily good with that. So that was a lot of the struggle as well. So, yeah.
So you had a double whammy there.
Yeah.
What about the gay side?
What about the gay side?
What about the aspect of, like, does this mean I'm gay? Like, if I'm going to have a relationship with a woman?
Yeah, like that. Like, when I then started to think on it, going, I think both of us put it at one point. It wasn't about a gender; it was about the person. So fell in love with the person, not just based on their gender.
So are you now coming out as pansexual?
No, I'm not. I'm very definitely lesbian. But that was a story that we'd created. You are a stirrer. That was a story we had created, like, to make it like okay, I guess, because her parents were quite religious. Like, that was never going to be a thing for her. Turns out it is now. But, you know, all of that sort of stuff. And I guess that's how we made it okay in our brains, that we weren't like, we didn't have to use the word gay. It was just like we fell in love with a person, not a gender.
Okay, so
But
for
I
you,
don't think that would have happened if it was a man. If I'd had the same conversations with a man, that wouldn't have happened, because I probably wouldn't have even let it happen and have those conversations, because that's just, but it just happened with her that there were no defenses.
so I wonder about when your identity sort of changed more to being a lesbian.
I don't think that truly changed until, and I had full acceptance of that until we met.
Yeah.
Before that, it was just about, trying to figure things out. But I knew that I was in this marriage and I was in this life, and I wasn't going to turn that upside down for anybody. And I didn't really, and until I started telling other people that I was gay, and that was after a fairly decent dose of some therapy and conversations. It was like, and started to own it myself. Then it became more about that's who I was. And I'm still not defined by the label of being gay or queer or lesbian or whatever.
Yeah.
But it was like, this is definitely my orientation. This is where I feel most at ease. This is where I feel most connected with another human being. Like, I'd always struggled in all my straight relationships with, physical intimacy, and, I'd never had, an actual orgasm until, I was with a woman, which is not uncommon. But, and I'd always sort of felt like it wasn't like, it was enjoyable, but it wasn't like, didn't, knock my socks off. And that's not a reflection on them. That was me, because I was very, almost, well, I guess the technical word I've learned now is disassociating, but just, keeping myself at arm's length from that. Whereas when I'm been with a female partner and I've been, very connected to them, like emotionally first, then the physical stuff has been just, just natural, and also easier to be more emotionally intimate and intellectually intimate and all of that sort of stuff, and more authentic. Like, so that's when I was like, this is who I am. This is my space where I'm at my, happiest.
Yeah. Beautiful. So to lighten things up a bit, what's your most interesting encounter with a woman in your dating life?
Right. Well,
I know the answer. I just want everyone else to hear it.
Well, I'm just going to preface this with an asterisk. This was not an actual in-person encounter, just in case people think I'm weird. But I had a lady connect with me on Pink Sofa, I think it was, and we were just chit chat as you do. And then it's like, oh yeah, I like dogs. Yeah, I like dogs too. Oh, okay, cool. Yeah, I've used to have a Roddy. Yep, I've got a Roddy. Oh, I've got two. I'm very close to them. I went, oh, that's good. Just thinking it was chit chat. And I can't remember the exacts of how it came out, but her dogs were very involved in her sex life. She started talking about their tongues and stuff. And I was just like, whoa, park the fucking truck. I am, no, that's, the dogs are not in the bedroom for a start. Like, that's not happening. And, not having much experience in things in general, I was like, people actually do that? Like, if you're listening to this and that's your jam, go for it. But for me, I was like, what the
Don't
fuck?
go for it. Leave the dogs alone.
Oh, she told me that. Anywho, but it was just this conversation. I was like, how do I extricate myself from this conversation? Like, I'm whoop. And I did not go back on to any for, like, I never was on Pink Sofa really, but I didn't go back on there for ages because I was too scared for, like, someone would send you like a hi and you're like, yeah, but like and within a few lines of conversation, you kind of knew what they were chasing by how they would direct the conversation. But none of the conversations, I had some wild ones, but none of them were that with the two Rottweilers that were her partners, for want of a better term, and she's happy to share them in the bedroom. And I was like, no, thank you. Thanks. No.
Yeah. So good one. What about some of your negative experiences on there? Because you sort of brushed over that a bit.
No, it's people. So when you're, I guess, for want of a better term, exploring and trying to figure out, is this my space? And understandably so, but it's confronting when people are a bit judgy of your situation. So I was always super transparent up front with people, like virtually the first chat or so, I'm married. Don't know if that's an issue for you. I'm not here to play games, but, I'm still figuring out stuff. And people would either go, well, you shouldn't be on here and be, not pleasant about it, or they'd be like, well, that's cool. But you knew that there would be no form of relationship, because essentially when I was looking to connect with people, it was people who were either not out as well, so it could be discreet, or, if they were just looking for, friends with benefits or whatever, then that was the better scenario, I guess. And, even as our relationship evolved in the early days, I'd said to you, like, this is not, a good way for you to live. Like, I don't want you to necessarily go through that. And you're like, yeah, well, I'm making choices for myself. I went, well, I know, but this is what I'm saying. But I see it a lot as well in, different groups. I mean, in Facebook and stuff, people like will post anonymously because they're like, don't judge me, but, and like, unless you've known who you are and owned it at quite a young age, we've all got relationships, whether they're marriages or partnerships or whatever. We've all got stuff that we're bringing along with us and have got to navigate our way through. But before we're ready to depart that, we need to know, or want to feel like we know, this isn't just a reaction, a knee-jerk reaction to something. It's like, this is who I am. And how else do you know? Like, how do you know you like anything without trying it out? But then it's finding the right people that would not necessarily be happy to be crash test dummies, but, that understand that part of the journey. So that was quite difficult. And, people are always suspicious of someone who has no photo on their profile and that's hard then for people to build that, the first step in building any relationship, whether it's a friendship or a work thing, is about trust. And, you needed to feel like you trusted the person to be able to share a photo or whatever, but then they're like, well, you don't have it up front. What are you hiding? And I was always very transparent. So a lot of conversations ended like literally after one message, as soon as I'd said what my situation was. Whereas, and I know that people have been burned by people who have not been transparent, and I totally respect them not doing that either. There's no right or wrong way to do it, but either way, you feel like you can't win either. Because then you get into a conversation with someone, weeks later, and then you reveal that fact, and suddenly, well, why didn't you tell me this on the first day? Well, it's hard to know.
And we very clearly had a friendship to start with.
Mm-hmm. I was very hardcore friend zoned.
I was being supportive because I felt really bad for you that you'd been treated that way.
And like when we connected, I was kind of thinking about getting off the platform because I was a bit over it, and same old. And then like you took the time to, I was engaging with you and answering questions, and I told you up front, you were like, yep, that's my boundary. That's a hard no. And we were friends. And I know that, and I've told this story about how your, one of your best friends had said to you, don't you fall in love with her? And you're like, no, I'm not. No intention of it. Next minute, here we are. Yeah. But it's, you had set up those boundaries. But again, I mean, it's similar to when I talked about my first relationship. Like, sometimes you have all these intentions, this is what's going to happen. And then suddenly you're like, fuck, how did we get here? And, for you, it was kind of like shit. And, and then had different thoughts about it. But we'd had so many hours of conversation and,
Yeah.
And I'd been 100% transparent with you about every aspect of my life.
And you were very supportive of me engaging with other people. So I would tell you about people that I were talking to, and
You'd send
even
me
to make
photos
sure
if they sent you flowers.
Yeah, even to make sure you knew that you were in the friend zone. Talk to you about planned dates for other people.
Yep. And I was fine with that because I had zero expectation. Like, you were someone I enjoyed talking to. I didn't know why. I really enjoyed talking to you, and you would ask me questions and I would answer you and I'd never told other people some of the things that we talked about. And I was like, how's it you can just slice me open? And, I know it's your skill set that you have and a gift, but it was very easy for me to be completely vulnerable and open. But I had no expectation of anything else flowing on from that because you'd made that very clear.
Yeah. So, as well as your catalyst relationship, there were some other relationships that you had along the way.
Mm-hmm.
You often talk about, I don't know the terminology you use about how you ended up with me, but there was actually a journey to get there.
I don't know the terminology you mean.
Like a golden goose or something like that.
You were the golden goose.
Yeah, I'm the prize.
Yeah, you are the prize. And yeah, look, there were probably 2 other relationships that I had. And again, they were very much, which is, I'm not proud of the fact they were very much at arm's length. Like, it was just, I could never give them 100% of me. And they were also not in a situation where I would consider it stable enough that I would upturn my life for that relationship.
Yeah.
And part of it also was people that I felt like, and it was probably the same with my catalyst relationship, is I could save them. I was trying to save them from, whatever. Yeah. And that's my nature. By nature is, I try and help people. The difference with you is that I didn't need to save you. Yeah. Like, that wasn't, and, you weren't trying to save me either. And it's probably why it just, works the way that it does. Yeah. But I was still keeping those people very much at arm's length. And it was, clearly a secret relationship. Like, we went out and I know that was hard for them. Like, even when we first started going out, it was hard for you. Like, yeah. I remember one day we were in Bunnings and you just turned automatically to give me a kiss, and then you were halfway there and you went, whoa, that's right, can't, Bunnings. And that's a difficult way to live. And that's what prompted me to go, okay, I need to make some changes, because I wanted to do that for us because of the nature of our relationship, not because of, and nothing against the people I was in those relationships with. Like, they served a purpose, as in my growth and evolution, and hopefully it served some purpose for them as well. Like, it wasn't all just one way. It wasn't all bad. Like, I was supportive and I helped them, and, we enjoyed each other's company and doing things, but it was still at that arm's length, kind of like I couldn't commit to them because, like, I had outside life that nobody knew about this other life. So it was kind of, it was pretty hard to manage that, and stressful, but it was because you're always living with that fear. What if someone finds out?
Yeah.
And it's very hard.
Sorry. I think it's important to normalize that, just that there were other experiences and they weren't ideal necessarily, but that you sort of compromised, I suppose. Would that be fair?
Yeah. And, I'd ask them to compromise a lot as well. So it's kind of, that middle ground of, like, is it working for everybody? Until it, and they did work until they didn't work.
Yeah.
And they wanted more than I can give, and, got it, frustrated. And then it just comes to its natural end, because it's like, well, I can't give you any more and you deserve more. And 100% respect that. So, it had to end.
Yeah.
But, and as I've talked about before, like, with you, I was compelled to make that change. But we'd built such a stable relationship already that I knew that I could make the change and I'd be safe.
Yeah.
That, we could deal with whatever, rather than just going, well, I'm going out into the great unknown. I don't know. And that was terrifying in earlier relationships. It's like, well, I don't know how this is going to be. Like, I don't know. And I didn't deal well with uncertainty through most of that time. So, you know, but then when I had a stable, supportive base, I was like, oh, it could be okay. Like, I feel safe enough to make that change. And I want to make that change because I can continue living this way, or I can move into this space where I'm I feel like this is amazing, or I could just exist over here. So I was compelled to make that change.
Yeah. And I think from my perspective on Pink Sofa, I was very much on an emotional roller coaster. And you rode some of those highs and definitely the lows around that. And it was a very chaotic time. You know, I would almost say addictive, that attention and that exploration of that. I just think it's important to sort of dig in a bit to some of those types of things, that it's not just like all going to be rosy, that there is a journey to go through. And that's okay.
You know, when you're sitting in this space and you're sitting alone and you get those little dopamine hits of, you know, you get that. And then it turns into a bit of that roller coaster stuff. You're like, oh my God, this is exhausting. Like the push pull, like you were involved with someone who would pull you in and then push you away, then pull you in. Then you're like, oh, okay, right, this is a thing. And then they, when you needed the most, weren't about, or going, okay, is your crisis over? Because now I need to tell you about mine. Or, you know, by the way, do you mind if we're ethically non-monogamous? You're like, what? Like, it's just all these things, and you're like not even able to emotionally process it, because you're like, this, if you tell me one thing, then that's the path I'm going in. Now you're telling me something else. I don't understand where it all fits or how it all works.
Yeah. And for me, it was when I had the catalyst relationship, I'd been sort of quite shut down, and then to have that opened up, it was just such an amazing exploration of what's possible. And then I wanted that so desperately that I, you know, probably put up with things that I shouldn't, and got carried away.
But, you know, we do that because we think it's the next one will be the one that we're looking for. And we've had this thing, and so we know the potential of what it can feel like, but then the trick is, how do we find that in a way that's not toxic to us? And unfortunately, and it doesn't matter whether you're gay, straight, or whatever, like, dating is fraught with peril. Like it can be incredibly a roller coaster, but it feels a bit more intense when you're in this space, because you're like, well, the pool's smaller, and you assume that everybody is on the same page as you and wanting the same things because we're under this one banner, but it's 100% not the case.
Yeah. So you've got a smaller pool, but there's a variety of types and things that people are interested in, and location. You know, the internet's sort of blown up, like where you can have a virtual relationship with someone, but does that translate to an actual relationship?
And, you know, under the rainbow umbrella, there's so many labels, and it's like, well, I only look at this sort of women, or, well, you look like this, so you should only want this sort of women. And there's so many arbitrary rules, which you don't even know. I don't think anybody knows. And so for me, it still comes back to, I've never been someone who, in any of my dating history, just pick someone on aesthetics. It's always been about the connection with the person. If I have some form of connection with a person, then it's easier for me to form a relationship. And then they're instantly attractive to me because of that other connection. Yeah. You know, it doesn't matter what they look like. That's not my initial thing. Like for you, I loved your smile the first time I saw it, like a photo of it. But, you know, it's about that.
It wasn't my natural beauty. Is that what you're saying?
Is that too? It's about the beauty in your brain and the conversations that we had that make your existing natural beauty even more beautiful, honey.
Got yourself out of that one, didn't you?
Yeah, I did. But it's, it's about, like, people say that the connections, they let you build a relationship first, but that's also on a flip side, because when you build this connection with someone, then you meet them and there's not that same thing, or it goes badly, then they're even more devastated. But they're not who they said they were, and it's very easy to tell people whatever you want them to hear via text or email or whatever. So it's until you can actually be, and that someone's being completely vulnerable and honest with you, that you can go, this is a different sort of conversation.
I think for both of us too, doing our own work was such a big part of it.
Yeah.
So working on ourselves to be able to have a healthy relationship, regardless of who it was with.
And you need to be able to know who you are and understand how you operate and what your motivations are and what your blind spots are, that you can then be vulnerable with, someone that you're connecting with.
And as part of that, quite interestingly, you and I had a bit of a disagreement this morning around what we're going to do today. And both of us wanted what was best for the other one. So instead of fighting for what we want, it was about, okay, well, you actually need this. So it's a totally different dynamic to going in a relationship and being desperate for getting your needs met.
And I think because we meet each other's needs so well, that's why we then our default setting is, what does the other person need? And, and not that it was a disagreement, but it was like, no, I think we should do this, because we don't argue, but it's like, well, no, but I know that you're exhausted and tired, let's do this. And I said, yeah, but I know that this is also important to you. And then we just eventually come around to the fact that you're right. And I was, in fact, yes, I was tired, but I was trying to take care of you. But we're also mindful about not putting ourselves last all the time either, just to keep the other person happy. But it's, which is where we balance each other. Is like, well, what's best for you in this moment?
Yeah. It's a bit like you going to that musical yesterday and I'm like, no, thanks.
Yeah, no, that's not my jam. Yeah. But we've got the freedom to do that, because it's like, what do you want to do? You can do whatever you want to do. There's no rules or restrictions on what either wants to do. If you want to pot around and cook all day or whatever it is that you want to do, okay. There's no rules. We don't, there are no have to's, but we built that on the solid basis of developing a solid relationship, but also, like you said, off that work we'd done.
Yeah. So a bit of a different question. If you had a chance to go back and come out earlier in life, would you?
And I don't think so, because I don't think I had the skills or abilities to do it appropriately and do it. And, I'm a big believer that everything in your life happens for a reason. It gets you, all the experiences and all the things I've done, good, bad, or indifferent, put me in the position to be able to do what I'm doing right in this second. And if I changed one of those things, then this doesn't exist. We don't exist. It's that whole butterfly effect. One small change, everything is very different. And knowing who I was and my emotional resilience and also my capabilities, I know that I wouldn't have been able to cope with some of the challenges that came with it. And I was not at a point where I could be even honest with myself about who I was.
Yep.
And so I don't think I would. The only thing I would have liked, and we've talked about this before, is if we had met 20 years earlier. So we have 20 more years of life together. But we've both said we weren't ready for it. We would have fucked it up royally. It wouldn't be what it is today, because we hadn't grown and evolved into the people we are today. I can say, I knew there was something different about me, like, growing up, but I didn't know what it was. I didn't know why I was drawn to a certain type of person or personality or things like that. So I think if I'd latched onto this identity, then it just would have been a clusterfuck of disaster.
Yeah.
What about you, my love?
I think back then it wasn't accepted. And I think so much of our identity was formed so early that it wasn't even a possibility in our mind. So we just had to be what everyone else was. Yep. And then it took a bit for us to work that out and actually embrace it.
Yeah.
When we're safe later on.
Yeah.
So I wonder about, so probably wouldn't go back and change that. What about if you're like a teenager now? Would you come out now?
I think it would depend on the relationships I had around me. To be honest, the family unit, the friends unit, like I know it's more accepted now, so that bit would be more easy. But I still think for me, knowing like how my DNA works, like it would very much depend on the people around me, like the family and that sort of stuff. So I don't know that I necessarily would. Again, would 100% depend on who was around me.
Yeah. It's a very measured answer.
Thank you. I like to be thoughtful.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Are there any other questions you wanted to explore today? Any other areas you think you...
This is 100% your show. So as we look at Dottie living her best life behind you on the lounge chair, looking out the window, it's up to you, my love. Like I gave you free reign today, and I'm sure we will do this again. Like I don't feel like this is one and done. But if there's, you can ask me anything that you particularly want to.
You've been on TikTok a bit more and Threads.
Yes.
Tell me about that.
Well, when I created the podcast, I created the social media platforms to snag the handle. Not that anyone else was going to steal big gay overalls, but that's just what you do. And I was using those as platforms as a way to spread the word of the podcast, not for any gains, but just to share the messages that I was sharing. And that was powerful in itself. And like I never really got into TikTok pre, I didn't really understand it. And to be honest, I still don't understand it, but it does seem to be where a lot of the people who resonate with my conversations live and hang out. And Threads, which is an offshoot of Instagram, seems to be there's no ads on there at the moment. And the algorithm is very good about connecting you with people with like interests very quickly, even if you don't have many people you follow. And I loved Twitter back in the day, like when Twitter was first a thing, like I loved it, like 140 characters, at one, you could put a photo on there, but that you did. Facebook to me was like you had to read someone's big long saga before you even saw their photos. Whereas, it was just about the micro status update, which was great. And there was a whole group of us on there. We'd get on and say good morning and tag each other each morning. And, it was great. And Threads now feels like that to me, very organic, natural conversations, like genuine people. Over time, Twitter became more of a dumpster fire and more of political stuff and fake news. And I got off Twitter more than 10 years ago now. Occasionally I dip my toe in. I was like, nah, it's all whatever. Whereas Threads is still that nice, organic. Everyone's like, whatever. And it's easy to, if someone follows you, it's easy to see if there's someone you want to follow back or not and have organic conversations with. And that's how I've connected with all the people who've been on the podcast, is essentially through firstly, then follow them on Instagram so you could message them and chat. And TikTok is just a more dynamic way of getting video content out and sharing stories and being, accessible and having the way to connect with other like-minded people.
Okay.
And
Sorry.
I was going to say, it's not without its perils. Like TikTok, I've had, numerous messages where people are like, hey, handsome, or hey, and so now I've learnt to pick it. Like as soon as they're like, hey, where are you from? Or how old are you? I'm like, out. Like not happily married, not interested. That's not my jam. That's not why I'm on the platform.
Glad to hear it. So what about Skool? What's that for? What's your dream for that?
The Skool group is about building a quality platform where people can connect and have thoughtful conversations about the journey. So without distraction. So on Facebook, you're always getting distracted with different pings and advertising, and it's very hard to vet people who go into Facebook groups. Like every so often, just about every group I'm in has had an issue with, dudes getting in there or scammers or, whatever. Whereas Skool, and the peril with being on a Facebook group is that at some point, if the group isn't really private, something could get shared outside the group, or someone could see you're a member of X group and go, well, why are you in that group? Like if you're not out, that's fraught with peril. Skool's not connected to your socials. And I've put, because it costs me to host the platform, I have like a $5 per month thing on there to help offset that. But also, if you're a troll or a scammer, you're probably not going to pay $5 a month.
Yeah,
it's great. So, and it's really about having better quality conversations, like rather than just, I can't find someone or I don't, and it's okay to have those conversations from time to time, but it's not your whole reason for existing. It's like, hey, I'm navigating this part of the journey. I'm juggling this. And people can then have thoughtful responses rather than you should just leave and burn it to the ground, or that's a horrible person. Like it's more, like high level conversations. Like we went on and we did, and we're well overdue to do another group call in there. And we talked about communication styles and relationships. And I think it's talking about more important stuff. So I wanted Skool to be a platform where people could come, take from it what they need, but also give more than they take. Nice. And it can be, because it's not connected to the socials and it's kind of a standalone thing. And I feel like I can vet it better for the wrong people. And over time, like, I've developed a reflection journal I put in there that I just gifted to everybody. So like, hey, here's the resource I've developed. Go use it. There's a self-acceptance ebook in there. There's stuff. And, it's not a platform for me to market things to, but if I'd create something, then I can share it with that group.
Yeah. And
maybe they'll find some benefit from that.
Yeah. So I wonder if your followers are aware of like what you do for a day job and what some of your professional services are.
Professional services, that doesn't sound dodgy at all.
You've got the red light in the background.
I do. So, yeah, my background, well, for 7.5 years, I owned a CrossFit gym and coached in that aspect. And then I've moved into more behavioral coaching in my day job where I coach business owners, specifically CrossFit gym owners and coaches, in helping them build their business and their, build their communities. But it's also working with them on themselves. And that was a process that I had been through when I worked with, had my own coach, is like, oh, it's not about the business, it's actually about me. So, and I love that work that I get to do with them. I also host a podcast. That's why podcast is easy for me, because that's what I do. And I enjoy those conversations because they're not just, sales pitches, and they're, not just, we talk about more, again, high level stuff and more behavioral and understanding people's patterns. So I love that. I have done some work in my own business, starting like a bit of a videography thing where I capture people's life stories and they get it back beautifully edited that they can give to family or keep for themselves, whatever they do. And it's, the couple that we've done have been incredibly amazing to sit and facilitate them in telling their story, and then seeing the finished product as well has been super cool. And to hear the feedback from the family, how much it meant to them and how much they loved it. So that's good as well. So I guess I'm
It's Good Chats with Lisa Kirkman.
It is Good Chats with Lisa Kirkman. Free plug. Sponsored, not sponsored. But it's, for me, and it comes back to the goal of Big Gay Overalls is talking about, helping people, creating a space where people can tell their stories on the podcast and making it okay for them. Like, our stories may not be the same, but then they may never have had anyone ask them questions and be able to share their story. So I feel like that's a powerful opportunity to offer to people. And plus, I am writing my book of my life and my story of coming out late in life. And, I'd like to do speaking and stuff off that and be able to tell my story to more people to help them. And also, the themes of self-acceptance, self-love, coming out to self first. And I guess that all of those three topics apply, whether it doesn't have to be about your sexuality. It could be anything in your life. And I think my authenticity seems to resonate with people and they like to listen to what I have to say. So, I would like to do more of that if opportunities arrive, or work with people, one-on-one. Again, I'm not harvesting clients, but, if someone reaches out and says, hey, is there a way I can work with you? Then I can make that happen for sure. But the key driver of Big Gay Overalls is really about me having a space to tell my authentic story so I could be more comfortable with it, so I can write my book and share my story. Because as my coach said to me, he's like, there is someone out there who is stuck where you were and needs your story. And if you don't put it out there in some format, then that's doing them a disservice, even if you never know who they are. Does that answer your question, my love? Perfect.
That's beautiful and a lovely way to finish up. So no doubt you'll be in the hot seat another time. Send me any questions you've got.
So if you do have questions, you can submit them and I will ensure to pass them on to my lovely wife to ask. But I appreciate you, my love, and the difference and the impact you have on my life on the daily, helping me find a spot. Like, I couldn't do any of this without the space that you've helped curate and create by the life that we have. So I love you. And thank you.
I love you too.
And I'm grateful for this episode today. So for those who have listened, thank you. Please hit like or subscribe so you don't miss new episodes when I'm sniped by Sharon. And she has me in the warm and toasty hot seat. These lights weren't red. They were green at the start. Now it's just heated up. It's quite warm in here.
Don't worry. I'll have to check that out.
You'll have to check that. But please feel free to follow on TikTok, Threads, Instagram at Big Gay Overalls Podcast, or you can check out my shiny new website, which is www.biggayoverallspodcast.com. Has my blog post. You can follow me on Substack, all the places. There's links in the show notes. If you want to connect, please reach out and connect. My email is in there as well. But otherwise, see you on the socials. And if you have questions, please reach out. And thank you again, my love.
My pleasure. Bye.
Bye.